Okay, so tell us a little something about your background and why you decided to run for Congress.
Well, first of all, John, thank you for having me today. I am Brynne Kennedy, and I am a candidate for Congress here in California's 4th District. Ironically, I spent much of my life pretty far from politics. I worked in the private sector for 15 years running a business, and through that business, I had the opportunity to be invited to Washington and provide some feedback to members of Congress on the economy and on innovations for the future. And quite frankly, I was horrified in those meetings. It just felt like members of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, really just had no clue about the real world, about where our economy is going, how difficult it is to run a small business, and what working families like the one I grew up in go through. So I thought, gosh, I could keep being frustrated about this, or I could jump in to be a part of the solution. Because I think this extreme partisanship and inaction from our government is the greatest threat to our nation and our community. I'm not a person to sit on the sidelines, so I decided to jump in and be a part of hopefully bringing us back together and solving some of the big challenges we face.
Well, great. That sounds really good. One thing we were going to ask you a lot of questions about local issues, but since you started on this, we're going to stay on the national level. So we're going to jump ahead in the questions a little bit because you mentioned technology. So one question I had, our country is very divided this time. How will you use your skills to facilitate bipartisan legislation, and how will you handle the opposition from your own party members?
You know, I think that a lot of the partisanship that we face today as a country comes from the people that we have in government. You know, I always say change the people, not the system. And we have career politicians who have been in government for a really long time, taken a lot of money from corporate PACs and extreme donors, and who have stopped listening to people who disagree with them. You know, my opponent, Tom McClintock, is a perfect example. He's been in government for 40 years. That is longer than the Internet has been around. It is longer than I have been alive. He funds his campaign with corporate PAC donations from the likes of PG&E, and he is rated the 5th most partisan member of Congress, so 430th out of 435 in actually getting anything done. So the first, you know, if you think about when your company or when a sports team is failing and is just not executing, the first thing you have to do is you have to change the people in it. And that is what I think the first step is to this, electing people who have the courage to listen to everyone, to surround themselves with diverse viewpoints, to truly represent a community like ours, and to lead from the middle, not from the fringe.
Okay, very good. Just on that note, how do you see technology being used to help eliminate government waste and to hold government more accountable? So you mentioned that many, you know, your opponent, the incumbent, has been in Congress 40 years before the Internet, and you alluded to the fact that they're a little slower to the draw on technology. So what would be some of the immediate, you know, short-term technology being used to help eliminate government waste?
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. You know, I spent much of my career in the private sector thinking about ways to connect people to good-paying jobs and bring more jobs to communities like ours. And the foundation of that is good Internet and the ability to start a business from anywhere or work from anywhere. So, you know, the first thing we need to do to make sure that our community has access to the broader economy and to create economic opportunity here is to make sure that we have high-speed broadband all across our community. And unfortunately, we have a lot of Internet deserts today. When we look at the government more broadly and how we eliminate waste and increase efficiency, I think it's really operating from the principle of how do we create smarter government. A lot of people ask me, do you support big or small government or right or left? I mean, candidly, I don't support any of those things. I think those are all silly terms. What I support is smart government, using tax dollars wisely, updating systems, auditing federal agencies to make sure that tax dollars are being used wisely, communicating to constituents about how their money is being spent, and looking to reduce duplicative regulations and sort of things that reinvent the wheel, that just take our money and don't spend it wisely. I actually support a moratorium on any congressional pay raise until we get our arms around this, how tax dollars are being spent, and figure out a clear way to communicate that and upgrade our systems and our bureaucracy. Because I think that's what our community deserves. And that's what the people deserve, to wake up every day, work hard, play by all the rules, pay their taxes fairly. They deserve to know how they're being spent. And that is something that I will work hard for, because I've been one of those people. I've been, a child in a working class family. I've worked in the real world. I've started a business and grinded it out. And that's something my opponent has never done. Never worked in the private sector and never really has understood that responsibility.
Okay, very good. So we're going to kind of take it to the local, some issues that really concern us. So number one, obviously, one of the major concerns for voters in the 4th District is forest fires. If elected into office, what specific actions would you take or initiate to implement the much-needed forest management of our federal lands with the existing environmental policies?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously one of the most important topics for our area. I know so many people are at risk from wildfires, at risk from losing their home insurance, looking out their windows and seeing smoke. And as you said, John, most of the fire risk that we face, and the 5 fires that are currently burning in our district, are all on federal land. So this is a federal government issue. Now, the interesting thing here is my opponent, McClintock, is one of the very few people in our entire nation who has been in a position for the last 10 years to solve this issue. He has been the federal representative sitting on the Natural Resources Committee with jurisdiction for forest management, and he has let our forests grow to an unhealthy level and created risk to every single person in our district. I think that's unacceptable. What I will do is I will work hard to make sure our U.S. Forest Service is funded to sufficient levels to do their job, to build fuel breaks, to do prescribed burns, and to manage our forests to health. Now, I will also work on incentives to build an end market for some of that forest management, to modernize the forest management. We have an opportunity locally to help fund some of this and to create jobs and to lead the nation in innovation with things like small-scale biomass, building a wood pellet industry, a prefab industry.
Awesome.
And that is very, very important, because this cannot be done with government alone, and it can be an opportunity to create jobs and lead the nation.
That's great. Okay, we're going to move to another question, and this is related to another major concern, PG&E power outages. We're undergoing one right now up here.
Yeah.
And so what actions would you take to implement improving the outdated infrastructure of our district's power grid?
Well, gosh, our power grid is, so woefully out of date with PG&E. Just as an aside, I actually live in Roseville. We have Roseville Electric, and we don't have the power shutoffs when PG&E customers do. So, it is possible. It is about accountability to the public and making sure your infrastructure is up to date. Now, we have to hold PG&E accountable for doing that. The first thing that I will do, and I am doing, to be in a position to hold PG&E accountable is I don't take any corporate PAC money. I don't take political donations from PG&E. Tom McClintock and many members of both the Republican and the Democratic Party in California have taken huge amounts of campaign donations from PG&E. So it's no wonder that they have not been held accountable by the very people that are supposed to be doing that. So I will be in a position to do that and work with the state on that. And to do that, We have to help PG&E upgrade their energy grid, bury lines where it's possible, harden the grid where it's possible, and not allow them to pay dividends or bonuses until that is done.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a lot of loss of revenue by small businesses and residents over the past few years, and nobody really holds PG&E accountable for the loss of revenue, and so it's good to see somebody speaking to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly difficult to manage a small business in our community in the best of times. I mean, California is a very difficult state to do business in, and I appreciate that because I have actually done that. And my opponent has never walked in the shoes of our small business owners. And then you layer on, the losses from power outages. You layer on the losses and the challenges from COVID-19. You layer on the escalating cost of health care for our small businesses with, very few solutions coming out of Washington. And, I just have so much empathy for our small business owners trying to make it and who are the backbone of our community. So one thing I'm deeply committed to is being the voice for small businesses in Washington. I know that our small businesses feel like they've been forgotten, and I have actually walked in their shoes, so I will work as hard as I can to reduce regulations for them, to reduce taxes, to hold PG&E accountable, to invest in infrastructure from roads to broadband so they have the basic foundation for operations, to get them financing and PPE they may need to navigate COVID-19, and also to just stand with them and be a voice for them.
Great. Brynne, I was going to, just on that note, you mentioned health care. Many of our members of our district struggle to afford health care, and many people, families, are uninsured or underinsured. So I was just wondering how you feel about the Affordable Care Act. I know we have California Care here, and what improvements you recommend, would you advocate for to help with the skyrocketing cost of health care?
Yeah, John, I'm so glad you asked this question because I have heard from thousands of people in our community about their anxiety about losing coverage or continuing to pay for the escalating costs or losing protections for pre-existing conditions. One of the big differences between me and Tom McClintock is our position on health care. I will defend the ACA. He wants to destroy the ACA. I will stand up to strengthen protections for pre-existing conditions. He wants to get rid of them. I will work to lower prescription drug prices. He voted against legislation to reduce prescription drug prices because that's where his donations come from. My solution for health care is to add a Medicare buy-in option to the Affordable Care Act. This is something that anyone could elect to buy into, an individual or a small business. It would be a much lower cost than what is available to buy into in the private market. Mm-hmm. And we could do that without increasing anyone's taxes by even 1 cent because it would be a buy-in option.
Okay. Very good. I've got another question. Leadership that supports our local economy and job creation. Obviously, another important topic. You spoke to that about creating new industries with forest management. And also, really, what's very important up here is affordable housing, and the homelessness is really escalated here. People that work are homeless in this county. What steps would you take to help our district to attract private sector investment, tax reforms, and just to basically help the local economy, get people out of the streets and maybe get some housing up here because it just doesn't seem like there's enough houses for people, and that seems to be a real key issue. One thing I notice is, a lot of us that have raised kids, they're in their 20s now. A lot of people's kids are moving out of state because they can't even afford to buy a home in the county they grew up in. So, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, we have to tackle the cost of housing in our community, our state, head on, and we have to make sure that people who do jobs in our community can live in our community. We have to make sure that as kids graduate, that they have good paying jobs that are fulfilling and that they can work hard and buy a home. You know, that is the promise of our nation, and we have to live up to that. Now, in California today, it's very expensive to build a single-family home. It costs almost $500,000 to build a single-family home in California, and 36% of those costs are from permitting and regulatory costs.
Soft costs.
So it's actually not that complicated to figure out why no one's building affordable housing, because the economics just don't work. So what I support is reducing the regulation and the permitting costs and introducing more tax breaks and incentives to make it feasible for developers to build affordable housing. It will be up to the local governments, obviously, to decide on exactly the zoning restrictions and sort of where they go, but we have to create the conditions for it to be possible to unleash much more building of affordable housing, and we need leadership to do that. Again, under Tom McClintock's watch, he's been our congressman for more than a decade. Under his watch, homelessness has gone up, the cost of housing has gone up, and people are struggling more. So what I offer is I offer change, the ideas and the energy to work hard and solve these problems.
Okay, very good. I just have another question. As you're aware, the 4th District is home to many active and former military and veterans. How would you support our military and veterans if elected in office, especially in the areas of healthcare and mental health services? It seems to be neglected up here a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm so glad you asked this question, John, because this is an area that is very close to my heart. I actually come from a family that has served in the military and in many American wars. My father got his family's first college degree through ROTC, and it's something that I very, very much appreciate, service to our country, and I will always stand with our veterans and our military servicemen and women. With respect to your question, I support modernizing the VA. I also support protecting and expanding the benefits that those who serve our nation should have when they come home. And with that, I support greater investments in mental health. I've seen in my own family how tragic it can be to suffer from PTSD and other mental health challenges when you come home. And we as a nation and as a community have to support and stand with the people who keep us safe and who serve our nation.
Very good. So I have one more question, more of a, kind of like the Barbara Walters closing question. As broadcasters, music has played and is so influential in our lives, and it's a powerful role in society. How has music influenced your life?
That's a very good closing question, John. I love it. In many ways, I mean, I think, we all listen to different types of music, whether we're relaxing or getting pumped up or whatnot. Right now we have an awesome playlist that we're using for the final few weeks of getting out the vote with all of our volunteers. Actually, one of the girls on my team's daughter made it. She's in kindergarten, so she's brought together all these songs to really pump us up and get us ready to win this election. Personally, I'm a big country music fan, and I always listen to country. I think it's a really great genre, and I know you guys were playing one of my favorite songs earlier.
I know
Jason
you're going to be a listener
Hope
now.
the High Road. Yeah.
So that's so good. I really appreciate you calling in. Very articulate, and you sound like you'd be a great leader. Just one last thing, I want to make a comment. I did invite Representative McClintock to interview. I actually spoke to him somehow, amazingly, Friday afternoon in person on the phone, and I invited him. He was non-committal, but I invited him to listen to you, and if he'd like, he can call up at 1 p.m. today, and I'll get him on air, and I'll ask him the same questions I asked you. So we're not streaming today because the power's out, but we're going to rebroadcast this, Brynne, so I'm sure you and your staff might like to hear it. And Denise wrote all these great questions for you, so we really want to give a big shout-out to Denise sitting next to me. And we'll let you, Ms. Denise will let your staff know when we're going to rebroadcast this program.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Thanks for keeping everyone connected and informed through your station and your work. And thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to everyone today. I'm really excited about the future. I know it's dark times for a lot of people. We've got a virus inside. We've got wildfires burning outside on federal land. We've got a lot of people whose lives and jobs have been affected by the virus. But I just want everyone to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves, work hard, work with everyone, and solve these issues, because it's absolutely unacceptable that our representative doesn't show up and has no solutions for these issues.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Brynne Kennedy. Good luck with everything. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.